10:34. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Gee and Ursula Show. When Seattle voters fill out their ballots this November, the Compassion Seattle Charter Amendment to address homelessness is not going to be on there, even though that measure was expected to pass. As we reported to you yesterday, it was struck down by a King County judge who said it went beyond the scope of the initiative process, even though she agreed with its intent. That news prompted Gee to reiterate the phrase that is commonly uttered, that Seattle is dying, and I disagree, and we got into an argument about that. Many listeners weighed in. Many agreed with Gee. A few agreed with me, but I am protective of the city where I live and where my sons and my husband were born. And I know someone else who is also protective. He is the head of the Downtown Seattle Association, Jon Scholes, who joins us now on the Gee and Ursula Show. Good morning, Jon.
Good morning.
So your group was also behind Compassion Seattle. So let's get your quick reaction to it not being on the November ballot.
Well, we disagree with the judge's ruling and her interpretation. Did appreciate that she noted as a voter she liked the substance of the measure. We think voters should have their say on this November. It's the number one issue in our city. It's at a crisis level. And so today we're actually filing an emergency motion of appeal with the Washington Court of Appeals to seek a stay of last week's decision that removed the charter amendment from the November ballot. And we're asking that court to make a quick decision here this week so that voters can have their say on this. Look, Seattle voters vote on lots of things. You know, we voted on plastic bag bans in the past and marijuana. We think voters should have their say on the number one issue facing our city, which is at a crisis level, which is homelessness.
Okay, now that is breaking news, actually. So you are filing. One of the problems, though, was that there's no funding mechanism. Is that going to change, or is anything going to change about it? You're just saying, no, this does not go beyond the scope.
There is plenty of money in our city, plenty of money coming from the federal government to address this crisis. What we've lacked is a coherent strategy and plan to invest in emergency housing and treatment that we know the people that are outside suffering in parks and other public spaces need. We've seen bickering and dysfunction among the elected officials that have been in charge of this crisis over the last 6 years since it was declared an emergency in our city. So money's not been our problem. Lack of investment and focus and accountability on the interventions that we know work have been. So elected officials have had their say. We believe it's time for voters to have theirs, and we hope the Court of Appeals agrees.
Jon, make no mistake, Ursula told you exactly what happened. I did say what I said yesterday, and I mean it. By the way, I just want to say, Jon, you're a friend to the show. I always respect and love when you come on the show. But as I say on this show all the time, I keep it all the way a buck, and I'm going to keep it 100 right here. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You even just said it yourself. All of this stuff that's been happening over the last 6 years, constant bickering amongst leadership, non-communication, the Compassion Seattle just being thrown off the ballot, right there, that whole thing. So my question to you is this. Tell me why I'm wrong, and tell me why you see a light at the end of the tunnel for Seattle.
Well, I trust the voters and residents of this city who care deeply about our city, about each other, and about people in need. And I think they share our frustration, certainly around the lack of progress on this issue. And they are smart, and they see what the solutions are, that we need to meet people where they are, bring them inside to a better place, give them the treatment and support and counseling, case management that they need to get better, and not turn our backs and turn our parks into permanent encampments where people suffer, where there's fires and fights and deaths. And they want and are demanding a better and more effective approach. So I trust the voters of this city and our community, and we believe they ought to have the right to consider this measure, and we hope the court will agree. And in fact, the plaintiff's attorney in this case, who took it off the ballot, made a similar argument in a case in Olympia several years ago, that voters should have their say and will sort out the other issues after the election. And we think that's the case here.
And if Compassion Seattle is not back on the November ballot, because there is this short amount of time, is there a candidate or when it comes to Seattle mayor or when it comes to Seattle city attorney that your group is supporting to carry out some of the intent of this particular measure if it doesn't show up?
Well, let's make no mistake here. Homelessness is on the ballot in Seattle, whether this charter amendment is allowed to proceed or not. And the candidates in both the mayor and city council races, but also the city attorney, there's a clear, sharp contrast there. Certain candidates, Bruce Harrell, Sarah Nelson, Ann Davidson, have embraced the approach that we've outlined and authored in this charter amendment to deal with this crisis. Their opponents have opposed it. So whether voters have an opportunity to consider the charter amendment itself, we hope they do. We hope the Court of Appeals allows this to go forward. But if they don't, homelessness is still on the ballot. And there are candidates in this race that want to continue to perpetuate the status quo, which has resulted in the crisis we all see across our city and parks and public spaces. And there are candidates that have embraced the charter amendment approach.
John,
so voters should take notice.
John, you mentioned when I asked about the light at the end of the tunnel, I was going to hold back on this, but I got to ask. You said that you were depending and counting on the voters. And Ursula and I talks about this and gets upset about the low voter turnout that happens here in Seattle all the time and has been continuing to happen. And so are you saying that you are saying that the light at the end of the tunnel is there because you believe that the voters here in Seattle will be the ones that ultimately help make the change for this city? I just want to make sure I'm getting that clear.
Yeah, I think we share much more in common as a community around the vision we have for our city, what we value, what we want to see. I think we all want to help those in need. I think we also want to have parks that we can use in the summer, and we want the Spray Park in Ballard to be open and cross country to be taking place at Green Lake. And too often politicians, present us these choices of either or, either you're for the homeless or you're for, usable parks. Well, we deserve both. And I think that's where the public and voters are in this city. And for too long, politicians and activists have tried to paint a counter narrative to that. And so I do believe the public and, voters generally share a common set of values in Seattle. We want our small businesses to get back on their feet. We want downtown to be rock and rolling again. We want open and safe parks, and we want those that are suffering outside to have access to emergency housing and treatment so they can get better. So there are candidates that have offered that vision, and there's others that haven't, that want to continue to perpetuate the status quo. And I believe the voters will see the difference, and they're going to have an opportunity in these important races. We hope they'll also have an opportunity to consider this charter amendment.
Okay, we only have 30 seconds, John, but I want you to give your best. This is why Seattle is not dying.
Oh, I think our best days are ahead of us. I wouldn't want to be in any other city coming out of this pandemic. We're almost, 90% vaccinated. We get to look forward to, incredible sports entertainment on the horizon here, a new hockey team, a new arena, a waterfront. We're investing in light rail, and we've got an incredible quality of life and a resilient, innovative people and city. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else rebuilding and renewing from this pandemic. Seattle's a great town. Our best days are ahead.
Thank you. That is Jon Scholes, the head of the Downtown Seattle Association. We always appreciate you when you join us on our show. Thank you.
Always appreciate the opportunity. Be well.
Thanks, John.